Hi, my name is Barry Sterling Mitchell. I produce the Sterling Net Point Power Rankings, and this is Ben and Barry on football.
And I am your co-host. I'm Ben Dickerson, lover of everything football, fantasy geek. It's fantasy playoff time, so everybody's excited about that. I got a few teams that are vying for a championship.
Ben is doing a remote today, so you'll notice we're not on the screen at the same time. I think he's in an upper village in the top of the Himalayas somewhere, studying the ancient art of the third down in the
NFL. Ancient art of the third down.
You know?
I like that.
You like that one?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to run through three things. Number one, we're going to do our top 10 in the categories that we find most important as a starting point for discussion. That would be net points, points for, points against, and our favorite turnover differential. In addition to that, then we're going to take a look back at last week, and we have some comments and some highlights and things of that nature. And then we're going to do the Bias Plus report, where we look at the upcoming slate of games, do our net point turnover differential analysis, and beg the question, what do you think as far as what we're talking about? So, Ben, let's get started with the top 10. All right. Here we go with my technical skills being challenged as usual. Bam! Did we get it in there?
We got it in there.
All right. TOD/G stands for turnover differential per game. Here's your top 10. Let's start at the bottom with Tennessee, who's actually tied with ninth with Minnesota. Very interesting neighborhood right there in terms of turnovers. Anything you want to say about those two?
No, except for both teams are playing well. Obviously, a 0.4 is a bit under an entire turnover more per game than they would give away, and both of those teams are playing really well right now.
Well, the next couple of teams is a couple of strange bedfellows and potential Super Bowl contenders. And I guess really, to be fair, I'd have to say so is Minnesota and Tennessee. Again, AFC, NFC at the very least, right? Playoff contenders as of right now. So they could possibly see each other in the Super Bowl. But a San Francisco, Kansas City Super Bowl would be interesting. Here you go with a half a turnover, net turnover per game for both San Francisco and Kansas City. What do you think about that?
Okay, here, back to back, we have two teams that just not only are playing well, but just came off of great wins. So, again, on the plus side of the turnovers, that means they're taking away more than they're giving away. That's always a good thing. And these two really are a possible Super Bowl matchup. Minnesota and Tennessee, not to demean anybody, are looking at trying to grab a wild card at this point. So jury's still out on them.
Well, let's look at the next neighborhood up there, and actually Baltimore is sort of in a little cove by themselves. They're at a little over half of a turnover per game net in their favor at 0.6. Just a little bit behind a three-row home deal with Seattle, Green Bay, and New Orleans, both pushing up close to one a turnover averaging per game in their favor. Differential, one turnover differential. And again, we remind you, turnover differential is the difference between the turnovers that you've lost or given up and the ones that you've taken away. So if you take away 3 and you give up 1, your net is 2. And if that happens over 2 games, we'll average it out to 1 per game. So long story short here, what do you think about that neighborhood? New Orleans, Green Bay, Seattle, and Baltimore.
So let's go Baltimore first. They were tested a little bit by the Bills, a team that's playing really good defense, but
did Lamar have a turnover?
just couldn't muster up anything. Did Lamar have a turnover?
I think he did. I'll look it up myself, but
That's a good possibility. He may have had one.
mm-hmm.
But they won. Seattle, on the other hand, was looking great the week before. Then they go out to LA, and all of a sudden the Rams got their offense like completely back on track. Not part of the way back on track, completely back
We're
on
going
track.
to talk about that last week's game and what's coming up because that's a division opponent, no doubt about it, man.
Green Bay was a little lackluster also, but again, whether you score a lot and the game is a barn burner, or if it's tight, if you get more turnovers than you give away, then your chances of winning are increased.
At the top of the scale, we have New Orleans. I think we basically talked about them. Pittsburgh still having fun taking the ball away from people.
Yes.
They are pretty good at that.
That's
And
carrying them.
and New England has been at the top all year. Not sure how they're trending in that, but they're still there at 1.5 turnovers per game. Taking a look here real quick, interception leaders, Stephon Gilmore and Joe Hayden both have 4 so far, and I think this is for the year. Minka Fitzpatrick got 5. So right there you got 2. What's that? 2 on Pittsburgh, right? Why do they still have? Yeah, all right, Pittsburgh. Marcus Peters got his, and Devin McCourty has 5. Both Minka, Marcus, and Devin all have 5 interceptions as of right now. So those are some of the people involved. Let's take a next look here, sir, at the next area that we like to talk about. And again, this is the area that wins championships. They say offense sells tickets, but defense wins championships. So let's look at the points being given up right now. On a per game basis, points against at 20.1, you have Denver. Surprising team, that Denver, aren't they?
Yeah, they'd be a little bit better even if Von Miller's been having some trouble. He's been around for a little while. I wouldn't say he's over the hill yet, but he's been banged up. But yes, tough defense by Denver.
Giving up just under 20 points, just 19. That's Tennessee, that's the Chargers, and that's Minnesota. They're in that 20-point range at number 7, 8, and 9. Defensively, anything on those?
It's crazy that the Chargers are still in there. Tennessee has kind of been around on the good defense charts for a bit. The Chargers have taken some pretty bad losses, and I don't mean by a lot of points, but they've taken some bad losses. Their defense isn't playing really, really well at this time. Minnesota's kind of middle of the road. They're doing well. But anytime you can keep somebody under 20, your defense is pretty much getting the job done.
If you can keep them under 20, well, when you're pushing them down like Chicago and San Fran and Buffalo, there's Buffalo right there at the top.
Yes, now those are real defenses there.
Khalil Mack is starting to come back a little bit. Starting to see a little bit more from him. Even though he's not, I have a list of the leaders in sacks right here. We're tied for 4th or 5th, however you want to look at it. T.J. Watt, Danielle Hunter, both tied at 12.5 sacks. Cameron Jordan, 13.5 sacks. And that was one of the concerns, when you're playing a team like the Saints, even with my Niners, it's like, can you handle Cameron Jordan? He could be disruptive. Chandler Jones, Arizona, 14 sacks. And Shaquille Barrett, Tampa Bay, getting it done, leading the league with 15.
Interesting.
So that's an interesting group of people there in terms of defense. All right. I tell people all the time, I got a tip when I was in college. and they said, look into becoming an actuary. And, coming out of the projects, I had no idea what he was talking about, but he said I was good in math. And I could have gone down to the library. I'm on a college campus.
Right.
That's how smart I am, right? I could have went down to the library and looked up actuary, but I never really did it. It was a number of years later, reading the business section, struggling financially, and thinking, okay, what can I do? And reading the business section, see the list of the top 10 jobs in the United States. And you're talking about top 10. We got a top 10 here, and points for, well, in terms of earnings for top 10 jobs in the United States, number one, 20 years running, actuary.
There you go.
So what can I tell you? Number 10, points for, they're putting it up right here, 24 and a half, Tennessee. See, you like when you see them on two or more listings. That's when you know you got somebody who's trying to do something. So,
right, absolutely. So they're holding teams under 20 by average, and they're scoring 24.5 by average. That's a winning formula.
That's a winning formula. We'll see what that nets out to. Dallas coming in number 9. Now, I'm a little surprised here because I think that Dallas is part of their problem. Oh, I'm sorry. This is points for. They weren't in top 10 of points against. So,
No.
This is one of the things. He's topping Dak. Is topping passing. They're getting all the scoring done. Everybody's looking at Dak saying, what's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem? But as far as I can see, they should be looking at the defense going, what's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem? Because at least he's giving them 25.7 points per game.
Yeah, that's true. Dallas fans will say, why isn't it more?
Well, you could say that, but even if you go up to number 1, it's not that much more. The number 1 scoring team in the league is scoring 33.1. So the difference between Dallas and 30 is like 8 points.
Yeah, that's a whole touchdown.
Well, that's a whole touchdown, but that means that your defense is giving up 28.7 plus points a game.
I agree, but when teams that are supposedly offensively talented, teams that are supposed to be superior on the offensive side, if they can't get that one more touchdown, people are going to look at them funny. I'm not saying they're losing because they're not scoring enough. I'm just saying the expectations.
New England's coming in 8th. This is probably the biggest fall that we've seen.
Yeah,
they were number 1 in scoring through the first 12 games of the season.
Yeah, they're falling down a bit,
and they're now 8th with 26. Minnesota 0.1, Seattle 0.2, New Orleans 0.5. If I'm saying correctly,
yes,
above them, all in that same area. So, but again, 26 points a game ain't nothing to sneeze at. There's a lot of teams that, this is only top 10 out of 32 teams. So nothing to sneeze at. Kansas City, 4th at 28.5. Am I reading that correctly? I have these reports right here in front of me. I actually don't have to look at the monitor for these. But long story short, your boy, Jameis.
Hey, look. If there's one thing I called right the entire season, he's only let me down like 1 week.
Jameis. And it's funny. Even in Madden, when I'm playing games, it gets to a point where I know if I limit my turnovers / interceptions under 2, I have a good probability of winning.
Okay.
Anything that's just personally with me and my game. I think he's at what? Probably close to 3. I probably need to look that up. what he's
I'm sure
averaging.
he's 2 point something.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So if he can just get down maybe one turnover, but again, their defense. Let's see something. Points against Tampa Bay defense is ranked 31st. They're giving up 29.3 points per game. So he's giving them 20. What's that? 29.1.
Yep.
And they're giving up 29.3.
Yep. So they're going to lose games.
San Francisco's coming in number 2 at 30.5, and Baltimore coming in at 33.1 points per game from the quarterback that everybody wanted to make him a wide receiver. The funny thing is now we have more quarterbacks who were wide receivers, because now you add the quarterback for the Titans. He's in there, was a wide receiver, but now he's playing quarterback. So this whole thing is really flipping around in a crazy sort of way, man. Even playing against Taysom Hill with the Niners, I wonder how they were going to handle that whole option thing. And to be quite honest, I think messing around with Russell and Kyler helped them out a little bit. And Lamar.
Not to mention that they looked really ready for those plays. I think they probably, during game planning sessions, packaged up a bunch of things that they do with Taysom Hill and found some things to look at and study and be prepared for. Because he didn't hurt him.
Not real bad. No, not at all. All right. So at the top of the hill, we always talk about net points. This is the Sterling Net Point Power Rankings. Here is your top 10 in net points. And as we tell people in one of the next sections in the Bias Plus report, where we compare the two, and the Bias Plus report, this is just what they've actually done to this particular point. You can take your projections, your forecasts, and go where you want to go from here, but at least you know. And while it is number one person is not guaranteed to win the Super Bowl, pretty much every team that you'll see in this section is seeded for the playoffs. Am I not correct there? And nobody
You are correct.
So that's one of the things about net points. You can look at all the seedings and all that stuff will change. But if you want to know who's kicking butt and who's really getting it done, you want to check out the net points. You want to definitely focus in on the top 10 because, again, this is one of those stats where you have both positive and negative numbers. If we look at net points, number 32 is Miami with minus 14 net points on a per game basis. So they're losing every game on an average of by approximately 14 points. But they lost a few games really big early on, which pumped up the Patriots numbers, for example. But now they're playing. They're still not ready to make no big comebacks. They're not really going anywhere. But we've seen some life come out of there, and that was always good. All right, number 10, New Orleans, 3.7. The LA Rams right there with the New Orleans Saints, and we're gonna talk about them Rams, man, because Buffalo 4.8. Am I seeing 2 4.8s there?
Yep.
Tennessee and Buffalo right there together at 4.8 net points on a per game basis. Number 6, Dallas. Now, the interesting thing is that this is net points. And so they don't necessarily have a winning record, but they are in the top 10 in terms of net points. So they've done enough damage in scoring. And like you said, if you've got that team, the question is, can you score at those levels against better competition?
Right.
Right above them is Minnesota, tied with Kansas City at 6.9 net points per game. So those are your, quote, single digits, not including the decimal, in terms of net points. Your top 3 here, and these are the 3 teams that you got to keep an eye on. These are only 3 teams that are in double digits. You have San Fran, 12.9, New England at 13.1, and Baltimore at the top with that great defense being a top #1 in scoring at 14.9. That means they're winning their games on an average by close to 15 points. What do you got for us?
What I'll say right now is, you see our net point power rankings. Hopefully you've been observing them and watching how they go. And you've seen all the networks that have their power rankings and their top 5s and top 10s. I will go out on a limb right now in week 14 and say that most of those teams, of those top 10 teams, with the exception of perhaps 2, and I don't want to say which 2, I got an idea, but I don't want to say which 2, but with the exception of the 2, all those teams will make the playoffs. Obviously, the teams that are running away with their divisions, you know that, but, so that would mean that, yes, I think Dallas will win the division because that's the only way they'll get in. So they're in that top 10. Somehow, some way they will prevail, win the NFC East, and get into the playoffs.
They finish out their season against the Eagles. We'll talk about that.
Yes.
But as of right now, Philadelphia's net points is 0. They're literally tied at 0 with Tampa Bay. So
fitting. So fitting.
Yes. Okay. That wraps up the top 10. That's turnover differential, points against, points for, and net points. No opinion, just the numbers as they've arrived going into the end of week 14, and we'll keep that on track for you. All right, moving on. The next segment, we'll be looking at last week's slate of games. That's week 14.